record has to be begin. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the session number 209 about the Lacrimation of Virgin Mary in the Byzantine heritage, cultural heritage. The correct long title of the paper you can read in the program of the Congress. Our session is dedicated to the question of narratives about the miraculous acts of the Mother of God interceding in the struggle against enemies, so in sieges, relate to the temporality as the main topic of this Congress, with representations of momentary but extraordinary events and timelessness. The Byzantine Christianity is considered here together with its daughter cultures, thus Kiev and Novgorod, and I am highlighting Novgorod because we have here excellent experts about the history of Novgorod. To our great sorrow, two paper presenters are missing. Florin Pascarita from Romania should present about the historical events of the Avar siege against Byzantium, but due to his missing, I will say some words about this event. So I will modify a bit my presentation. Then Dmitry Hordienko from Kiev is missing because he survives the not so comfortable events in Kiev in Ukraine, and he was put 2 times in hospital in this year. So I very hope that we can gather a new session next week with those presenters who are missing and with those who are involved in these topics. So, due to the chronological order, my job is to present the first presentation. That's why now I will give the job of the moderator to Dr. Dagmar Vyslozhilova for a while.
Okay, thank you, Sandor, very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome once again the main organizer and chair of our session, Sandor Feldváry from the Hungarian Academy of Sciences and the University of Debrecen. Sandor Feldváry was born in 1963. He studied at Budapest University in Hungary, math and physics and Old Greek and also history for 2 years. Then he graduated from Budapest University in 1991 with 3 master degrees in philosophy, Russian and Ukrainian. Then he enrolled as postgraduate PhD student at the Slavic department of Debrecen University in Hungary and as a senior research fellow at the National Széchenyi Library of Hungary. Between 1998 and 2002, he was a postdoctoral research fellow at the Academy of Sciences of Hungary, then grantee researcher at the Academy of Sciences of Hungary, and university lecturer of Baltic Studies at the Debrecen University. After he read courses in the history of European literature in Middle Ages, Baroque and Romanticism at the Esterházy Teacher Training College in Eger, North Hungary. About his research records, he published more than 200 papers, he read on 200 conferences, and he was many times invited as session chair and keynote speaker by the Estonian, Lithuanian, and Ukrainian Academies of Sciences. As for Byzantine studies, which is the topic of today's session, his field of research is the study of the visual representation of the imperial power, in particular the mosaics in the Hagia Sophia. He presented already 4 times in the International Medieval Congress in Leeds on the mosaics of the south vestibule of Hagia Sophia and the Hungarian Porta Speciosa mosaic. And now he presents on a literary topic. So please, Sandor, the floor is yours, and I will remind you 25 minutes after you begin to speak.
Okay, thanks so much. So briefly, I'm an old chap, and my favorite topic is the political theology of the imperial power, how it is depicted in the visual representation. But in this time, we have to deal with the literary representation. So my share screen is visible well. Yeah, okay. So the Lacrimation of the Virgin Mary, there is in brackets because according to the grammar, the Virgin Mary, but Virgin Mary is a proper name. So during the Avar siege, and that's the point I mentioned that our missing colleague, Florin Pascarita, should present about the historical events of the Avar siege. So I will summarize very briefly the historical background as it depicted in the hymn of Georgios Pisides in Greek, so George of Pisidia. So, okay, so let's see the map of the Byzantine Empire in the middle of the 17th century. Thus we can see that the large empire of Justinian the lawmaker, actually the Justinian who gave the name of the other conference of Byzantine studies in Skopje, the days of Justinian. So the Byzantine Empire gained its largest territory in Justinian, and a century after Justinian, the Byzantine Empire lost its territories in the west. So you can see that everything is of white color in the west. Therefore, in all time of the question, the Emperor Heraclius thus led military campaign to east, because the Sassanid Empire in east was the counterpart of the Byzantine Empire, and Emperor Heraclius was of the opinion, and he succeeded it, to gain some territories, or if not so gain, but to strengthen the borders of the Byzantine Empire in the east. Because in west, the barbarian tribes thus caused much damage to the Byzantine Empire. Therefore, in 626, the emperor was busy in the war in east, and the barbarian tribes of Avars, the Avar Empire, the Avar Khaganate, was located in the Carpathian Basin, and they attacked the Byzantium. So no troop, no emperor, no warlord remained in the capital of the empire. So how to defend the empire? This is a very good situation to create a pious legend that Mother of God, not Virgin Mary, but Mother of God, I will say about the distinguishing between the different types of Mary, so defended the capital. In fact, the Greek fire defended the capital, so it's a very, very important and very famous tool of the Greek military technique, the Greek fire. And we have no exact source about the Greek fire, but we have religious sources about the intercession of the Virgin Mary, rather Mother of God, and the Greek fire there appears. So George of Pisidia, Georgios Pisides, was a very famous poet of the Byzantine literature, and some authors, some recent authors in the field, evaluate George of Pisides as the most important and most significant poet in the Byzantine literature, but I am a skeptic because I try to avoid such evaluation that who is great and who is greater. This is very, very subjective. So George of Pisides, what is fact in exact way that George of Pisides made great impact on the hymnography of Byzantine history. And mainly he strove to depict the person of Emperor Heraclius. This imperator is in Latin language, in English Emperor Heraclius, as the great conqueror. So he was a court poet of Emperor Heraclius. Therefore, he continued that old Roman tradition from the pagan tradition before Christian times, that the poets, for instance, Virgil, who wrote the Aeneid, was the court poet of Emperor Augustine. And that's why Augustine, as the son, appears in the epos, the long poem, Aeneid. So in Byzantine times, in Christian surrounding, in the Christian culture, George of Pisides appears as a court poet of Emperor Heraclius, but he couldn't depict the emperor as the god, because in pagan Roman times it was normal to depict the emperor as a god, but he depicted the miracle of the Mother of God, okay, which provided the imperium, empire in English. I use Latin words, of course. So the emperor proclaimed a military campaign against the Sassanid Empire, against the Persians between 604 and 608 and 628. And in 26, the Avar tribes attacked Byzantine. George of Pisides also wrote philosophical poems and other poems, but we have no time and no room to deal with his poetry. Maybe I will continue it in Skopje. And what is important, that Mother of God is depicted in his hymn as a warlord, as a commander of the weaponized tiers. What does it mean? In the hymn Bellum Avaricum, it's a Latin title generally. Greek poems usually got Latin title in the literature in the field. The miracle-making Mother of God appears as a commander of the weaponized tiers. So those which burn the insolence of the barbarians. Not the barbarians, but the insolence of the barbarians. So it's a very delicious, poetic way to depict what was there happen. So to burn barbarians, it's a very cruel act. But to burn the insolence of barbarians, it's a theological act, because Constantinople was a sacred city, of course, with the Hagia Sophia, or Hagia Sophia in Greek, and Avars attacked the sacred Constantinople. Therefore, the barbarians were, the behavior of barbarians was very insolent. This is the poetic way of depiction of what? The Greek fire. So, what can burn the ships of barbarians, the troops of barbarians? The Greek fire. And we have another source which does quoted more often. Theodoros Synkelos, here is in Greek, Theodoros Synkelos, and in Latin Theodoros Synkelos, who was a diplomat. Nowadays, people refer to Theodoros Synkelos as a historian. But on one hand, he was a church person, a diplomat, who served the emperor. It's very important. Not the church hierarchy, not the church power, but the imperial power. And he depicted in religious way that Mother of God appeared on the walls, because her icon was established on the walls and defended the city. and from Theodoros Sinkelos, who created only in brackets, who created a theological text, a philosophical text in Christian way. The poet George of Pisides created a metaphor of the weaponized tears. So let's see this place in the text of the hymn. The tears of the Mother of God as defenders of the city. Χαῖρε στρατήγε ton ἐν-όπλων δακρұων, ton porpylon ton, to trasos to barbaron. So Χαῖρε, this is an introductory word. Hail, welcome. Stratege. Strategos in Greek is the commander, a warlord. Stratege in vocative form, in the calling case in Greek. So, welcome stratege. So, strategos, this is the Mother of God. Okay. Ton ἐν-όπλων δακρұων. Δακρύos, this is tear, and ton δακρұων in genitive plural is of tears. So, thus, it means that Mother of God is the commander, the warlord of the tears. What kind of tears? ἐν-όπλων tears. Oplos, this is the weapon or gun, so the weaponized tears. Therefore, this text very clear shows that the Mother of God is the commander of the weaponized tears. It's very different from the very pious Western tradition where the weeping Mother of God, the weeping Virgin Mary, is very sad because the country faces some wars, some problems. No, this is very active. This is this is an Amazon from the pagan Greek mythology. And porpylon tone, thus this is the participle in active mode. So burning, porpyleo, I am burning. So porpylon tone in genitive plural, because the dacrұων porpylon tone, that is the weaponized tears, I burning. So what the tears burning? And in genitive, because Mother of God is of the commander of this porpylon tone burning tears, to trasos, the insolence, the nastiness, the mischievousness, to barbaron, the adjective at the end, to trasos to barbaron, thus very clear that the object is the insolence, the trasos, and barbarians are only in adjective. So it's a very theological metaphor that Mother of God is burning with her tears the insolence. That's what is against the Christianity. So let's go very quickly because I have only 10 minutes. So the Bellum Avaricum also contributed to the narratives of the Byzantine literature, so poetic innovation, not only with this metaphor, but we have not much room for the entire analysis of this hymn. And on the other hand, as Mary B. Cunningham, she's a very famous author in Byzantine historiography and art, has shown that textual evidence suggests that the role of the Virgin Mary as intercessor in Constantinople increased from the 4th century, especially after the siege by the Avars. So before and after, so the soul was already elaborated. But this development of motifs hasn't yet enough research. So, okay, let's use the paper of Cunningham. Hymns, sermons, and biographies demonstrate the growing importance of the Virgin Mary in the 8th and 9th centuries. emerging in the 7th. In the 7th, thus in the time of the question. If this is true, then hymn of George of Pisidia or Georgios of Pisides was included in a general process, but this very influencing poet created such metaphors which then influenced the first literature. So this is the paper of Cunningham, Mary as an intercessor in Constantinople during the Iconoclast period. And this is the problem, that how we can reconstruct the intercessing of Mary in the Iconoclast period, where the icons were ruined. And the book where the paper was published is very important. There's the Presbeia Theothokou, with Greek title, that the intercession of Mary. So this collection of articles studied the problems of intercession of Mary. And what is important to me, that this icon of Mary in the time of the Avar siege, about Theodoros Sinkelos wrote a historical text, and poet George of Pisides wrote a hymn, was the icon from Blachernai. Because the Blachernai palace, the icon in Blachernai provided the imperial power, while other icons from Hodegetria, from the Hodego monastery here, provided the church power. As the French Byzantinologist Brehier wrote in his monograph about the institutions of the Byzantine Empire, a whole chapter that Brehier distinguished between the church cult, of church religious cult, and imperial religious cult, the church religion and imperial religion. So that's why it was important that this was the type of icon of Mother of God, not of Hodegetria, which shows, so this is the Hodegetria, which is showing the way, Hodos, and the way, and the other type of Mother of God, such as the Eleusa, as the very famous Russian icon. And a professor of the Stanford University, Bisera Pencheva, created a huge and very famous monograph about the relations between the icons and power, about how the different types of icon had different role in the cult, so in the religious cult and in the church cult. And Pencheva highlighted that the non-Hodegetria types of icon, thus the Mother of God, that the Theotokos types of icon in Greek, belonged to the imperial cult, the imperial power. The Hodegetria type belonged, the Hodegetria type belonged to the church cult, because there was a pious legend that the Apostle Lucas painted the original picture of Mother of God, and this was kept in the monastery of Hodegon. In reality, it was not true, but even the Spanish painter of Greek origin, El Greco, depicted this pious legend. So the Hodego monastery had that icon, which was legendary due to Apostle Lucas. But the imperial palace, Blachernai, had that icon, which was not a Hodegetria icon. And therefore, the icon from the imperial palace was established on the walls. And this is the political theology of this metaphor, that hail warlord. Which warlord? From the Blachernai palace, from the imperial palace, not from the monastery. Okay, so in this way, this metaphor provided the power, the imperial power, because the Emperor Heraclius was busy in the war at the eastern border of the Byzantine Empire. But that icon, which hang on the gates of the imperial palace, not on the monastery, defended Constantinople. Therefore, this theological creation and this literary metaphor in some way defended the great mistake of Emperor Heraclius, who left the city empty. Okay, this is the political theology. And in further, maybe we will listen to interesting arguments about the Russian following of this theological metaphor, that Mother of God is the provider of the imperial power, the political power, and even some Russian authors as Teteryanikov, Natalia wrote about that, even Andrei Bogolyubsky knew well that this is very important, but that is not my topic, but the further topic. But as for the references in the field, a monograph appeared in Moscow, which dealt with this Byzantine story too, what I am speaking about, and other papers deals with Russian story, but they didn't distinguish between Hodigitria and Theotokos. And that's why I highlighted the monograph of Bisera Pencheva, professor of Stanford University, actually of Bulgarian origin, who published a large monograph dedicated to this problem, that Hodigitria always provided the church religion, the church card, according to Brehie, and Theotokos always provided the imperial power. But I have 3 or 5 minutes, so I want to return to the problem of iconoclasm, because the oldest type of depiction of Mother of God was the orans. As we have a good monograph from the pen of Limberis, the Divine Hades, this great author thus proved how the pagan Greek tradition became Christianized, was Christianized. So the pagan Greek goddesses such as Thetis, the mother of Achilles, became a mother of God. And Limberis wrote about the Synod of Ephesus, because at some conferences in Russia, in the discussion, I was asked the question that why I'm not speaking about the theology, the Ephesus Synod. It is well known for everybody who dealing with the topic, and I'm focusing on the political theology. So Limberis proved that the Mother of God played a very important role in the imperial power, even when Pulcheria, the Empress Pulcheria, played a very important role in theological debates at the Ephesus Synod. So I have no room to deal with it, but one can read this monograph actually at this internet link. So that fact, the oldest type was the orans. Therefore, the Russian specialist Kondakov wrote that the oldest type of orans was to hang, should hang on the gates of the Blachernai palace before the iconoclasm. Okay, these are books of Kondakov in Russian with internet links, and but after the iconoclasm, the Theotokos type. So when the child is in hand, but not a Hodegetria type, not showing with hand, not showing the way, became the icon of the Blachernai palace, because in the iconoclast, the icons were ruins. Okay, we have no direct sources. And as for the main references, I am highlighting Pencheva because Pencheva proved that, okay, the Orans was the oldest type of the Mother of God and the symbol of the imperial power. However, after the iconoclasm, not the Orans, but those type of icons as Mother of God, not Hodegetria, played the role of imperial religious cult. And that's why in Russia, in Oldras, in Kievan Rus, those type of icons of Eleusa icon became the symbols of the imperial power, okay, because it's a cultural heritage from the Byzantine culture. And I have already mentioned the Peltoma, das collection of articles, and Maria Vasilaki, and still a Russian author Lidov, who wrote a Russian article Чудотворная икона Византии, das Miracles icons in Byzantium and Oldras, but this Lidov was the author whom I have criticized that he hasn't distinguished between the political theology of the Theotokos icons and Hodegetria. So thanks so much for your kind attention, and I tried to modify somehow my original lecture because our great colleague, the Roman colleague Florin Pascarita, is missing. Therefore, I spoke about the literary metaphor, the poetic metaphor of George of Pisidia, but I was to speak somehow about the historical background too. So I very hope that in next year we can still collect some further sessions, and my further step will be to focus on other metaphors and Greek poetic forms of George of Pisidia, hopefully in Skopje. And now, after the next presentation, so we will, if people are sitting in the room in Leeds, I can't see, so the discussion will be after the next presentation. So thanks so much again. Now I back to the job of the moderator, and okay, my cell phone is working. So if someone has questions, don't forget the discussion will be held at the end of the session. And now we go further, and we have two co-authors of the next presentation. The first is Dagmar Wislow-Zilova, who is a historian, philologist, and Slavicist, who received her PhD from